Book friends in here before it's officially time to run the show here. We got the circles going there, 1 and 2. All right. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, the 28th, and it is time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, for these morning Broncos shows, Scott. Scott, how you doing out there in Atlanta? What's new?
It's cold. It's 33 degrees this morning. That's
God.
chilly here in the South.
That's rough.
So I've got the hoodie, I got the hot coffee. I got a hot team that we're about to talk about. That's what's hot right now is the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, gosh, man, what a hottest team in the NFL right now, winning against good teams. This isn't like, my Iowa Hawkeyes fattening up against Big Ten West where it's, Minnesota, Illinois, Northwestern, Nebraska. No, you've beaten the Bills. You've beaten a pretty good-looking right now Packers team, beaten the Chiefs, of course. You've beaten the Browns, the Vikings, who didn't look so good last night, but they looked good before you beat Denver.
Vikings were on, what, a 6-game winning streak when you came into that? 5 or 6 game winning streak when you came in? It'd be like if someone beat the Broncos right now, okay? The Broncos are, what, 6-5?
Yep.
6-5. They're just 6-5. Yeah, they've won 5 in a row. They're a pretty good team right now.
Yeah. They've been pretty good. It can come crashing down quickly, as we're seeing with the Vikings here. But we're going to ride it, as long as we can. And let's say hello to some folks in the chat as we get it rolling here. So we got Jeremy Sean in the house saying, "Morning, boys. The thing that makes Russell Wilson more than a game manager is his ability to make plays in the clutch. It's the same thing that made number 7 a legend. Russ is and has always been a gamer." Absolutely. That's something. So Jeremy's obviously getting into the article that we're going to talk a little bit more about here. The Athletic's Mike Sando, who covered the Seahawks for a number of years, and I think he's actually pretty darn insightful beat writer for covering the Seahawks team. He pretty good football knowledge. He does a football podcast with a former general manager as well for the Athletic. But Sando did an article. He does it every week called Cover 7, covering 7 topics, and his number 1 topic was the improbability of this Broncos team, talking about the defense, Sean Payton, and Russell Wilson. And we can get into some of the numbers, but we had everybody's favorites, some anonymous coaches quotes about this Broncos team and Russell Wilson. That we'll get into here, just because I think they could be perceived as inflammatory, but I don't really think they totally were. And Jeremy kind of gets into this. Game manager being a dirty word for the Broncos in this case. It isn't. John Elway, when the Broncos won their Super Bowls, was a game manager. They ran it through the offense through Terrell Davis and made plays when it's needed. And you're kind of seeing that right now with Russell Wilson. Not that Russell Wilson is John Elway, but there is something to be said about managing the game and taking the load off of the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, game manager. How about following the game plan? That's what I see out of Russell Wilson right now, is his willingness to adapt. And he was humbled last year and to follow the game plan. And when it's needed, we can sprinkle a little Russell Wilson magic in there because he's still capable, as Jeremy says, of making the big play, of making the clutch play, of creating something out of nothing. A guy who's strictly a game manager that's not what they do. They don't have that ability. Russell still has that ability. He's always had that ability. Right now, he's a game plan quarterback. Oh no. Well, he's also a game planning quarterback. As he's won 5 games in a row.
He has won 5 games in a row, and there's some.
Which Warner Looney Tunes character? I feel like Yosemite Sam up there, Porky Pig. Spit that one out, Scott.
I've been there too, man. It's okay, tongue tied, but good to see you, Jeremy. We got David Youngkin coming in saying there's one big problem with people that talk but don't want their name out there. It's called spineless. I mean, I've definitely been to the point where, you have information that you don't want your name attached to, per se. I guess this is more an opinion than it is actual information that's been passed down. But, the anonymous stuff is always interesting to hear. I think it was Jeff Risdon, who does a lot of good work covering the NFL draft. An article resurfaced from him about a bunch of people saying anonymously, like, man, I know that Bryce Young is quarterback 1 for a lot of people, but I'm scared to death about, the 5-foot, 185-pound quarterback who is an elite athlete with an elite arm. Nobody would say that out loud. They wouldn't put their name on it. I guess it is a little bit spineless, but it is. I think there is still something to the anonymous quote.
Yeah, it's better. I like it a little better if you have multiple on that and not just one, because then it comes off as an agenda.
Yeah,
You know,
and there were multiple in this one, multiple anonymous defensive coaches. Just to be
okay.
clear.
Because like I've said, it's we're out here, we're spouting off all the time. Our takes. Well, we're accountable. I'm accountable to you as a viewer. I'm accountable to the people I'm talking about. And there is no accountability in anonymity, and that's the scourge of the internet and social media. And to then give that a platform on a place like The Athletic, oh, okay, fine, whatever. But if someone were to ask me, by God, I'd tell them. Who was saying that? Well, I can't reveal a source. Oh, BS. But you could sit there and spout everything he had to say about it anonymously. I'm with David on this one. I think it's chicken scratchings, personally.
I always find it interesting, and I appreciate it because it gives us something interesting to talk about today as well.
Well, here's the difference, Nick. Sean Payton was drug over the coals for breaking protocol and saying what he had to say about Nathaniel Hackett in a moment of, like he said, he was probably, over caffeinated, and, we spout off at the mouth. How about 10 minutes into the show a little bit when the caffeine starts kicking in too? But by God, he was accountable for that. His name was attached to that. He could have just gone on and said, anonymous coach says, took a look back at the Broncos, blah, blah, blah. And that's weak. He took the bullets for it. Now he's kind of getting the rewards for it too, to a certain extent, because Nathaniel Hackett's a disaster and the Broncos are 6-5 with a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah, they've been very hot, of course. And yeah, this is definitely Sando's article or tidbit comes off as a lot of praise it still comes off as praise for the Broncos, specifically that of Sean Payton, as well as the flip in the narrative, I guess, or the situation for the Seahawks and the Broncos. You flip back a year ago and you see Seahawks have all these picks and they're heading the right direction and they might have something with Geno Smith. Well, now it's a Seahawks team that looks like they're waffling a bit. They cannot stop the run to save their life, and Geno Smith has regressed a tad as well. I mean, there's some issues going on there with that Seahawks team. Feels like a little bit of animosity maybe starting to boil up in there between defense and offense. But
it was a rebuild. What the Seahawks did last year shocked everybody. I mean, it was they unloaded Russ because they had a guy that was a valuable asset, and they didn't think they had a window to win while he would still be productive. So he wanted out. They got a good return for him, and that was the beginning of a rebuild for them. They shocked everybody last year. If they were 6-11 last year, which is kind of where we expected them to be, 7-10, and didn't overachieve to the extent that they did, and now what are they, 7-5, somewhere in that neighborhood? You'd see progress. So sometimes it's almost like, oh, you overexceeded expectations and now you're regressing. No, I don't see it that way, Nick. I think they wildly overexceeded expectations last year, and this is where they should be in the arc of the rebuild with the picks that they got from Russell Wilson. They were more of a 7-10 team last year. They played well past that. Hats off to them. But when they made that move for Russell Wilson, it wasn't with the idea that we're going to be a playoff team. I promise you that.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is probably more in line with what we expected from them and more in line with what we expected from Geno Smith, who had been playing pretty good up until that Baltimore game this season. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of rumors that they were head over heels with Anthony Richardson, and he goes pick 4, and they end up getting a really good cornerback in Weatherspoon from Illinois. But that also points to a team that's in transition if you're looking to take a rookie quarterback. Not a rookie in here. Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, good morning. Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Hope you're doing well. Hope you have a great Tuesday. We always appreciate you coming in. We see our guy Ethan in the house saying, good morning, gents in Broncos country. Stephen Conklin says, good morning. National media starting to take notice of the Broncos. Absolutely, they are. It's a lot of fun to hear that. Brian Dunn, good morning all. Bama X is in the house. Great to see you, Bama. Good luck this week against Georgia. Man, that's if Alabama beats Georgia, talk about absolute playoff chaos, because you can't leave out the SEC champion, but how do you leave out a Texas team that beat Alabama by double digits in their own home stadium? I mean, it could get really messy if the undefeated teams lose this weekend. So I'm almost hoping for chaos, but who knows? We got Conga coming in saying, so no MVP for Russ. No MVP for Russ, not this season. Also probably not comeback player of the year. He's playing well. He's come back, but going to be nearly impossible to beat Hamlin, which he almost died on the field. So I mean, that's write
The
that
more
one
you
up.
expand the playoffs, the more teams are going to have a claim to a playoff spot.
Yep.
It's like instead of just screwing over one team, 2004 Auburn Tigers, you're going to screw over 6 or 7 teams.
Yeah, going back to the college football playoff stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're getting to 12. This is like the first year where it really would have been good to have 12 because there's not a consensus like top 4. Like there's going to be somebody who's deserving that's left out this season, but that has never happened in the 14 playoff history. I guess besides the first one where they left out the Big 12 champion. But that's we'll see what happens here. I'm excited for the boys in the South to come up and have to play a cold game in Michigan or Ohio State in December. That'll be a good time with the actual home games in the playoffs. Blave Bliss, good morning, Nick and Scott in Broncos country. Hope everyone has a great one. We hope you have a great one, Blave. We always appreciate you coming in. Robot of Doom says, good morning, Broncos fam. And Rust, I trust, baby. Good to see you, Robot. Mark Schrader's in the house saying, good morning, Scott and Nick. Always appreciate Mark. Mark always, I posted the maternity photos yesterday, and Mark, told me I outkicked my coverage.
Yeah, I was gonna make a special teams joke in there too, knowing what you like about special teams, but you already had it by the time I saw it.
Yep. Yeah, it's God bless, man. My wife is
Makes you a better man, dude. Don't ever let her know that she could upgrade at any given moment. You treat her like a queen.
Yeah, God, especially right now. But thank you, Mark. Good to see you. We got a Akey saying, what an amazing team, this Broncos team. I can't ever tell if Akey's sarcastic or not, but it has been a pretty amazing team this year. Tyler Brooks, Broncos are dang good AFC team. Could possibly knock off anyone. It's definitely possible, especially when you're turning the ball over like this and winning the physicality battle. Annette comes in, says, good morning. Good morning to you, Annette. Hope you're doing well. Sinji says, I love our new moniker, Dirty Denver. I think that's, I don't know how I feel about Dirty Denver. I haven't heard that or seen that. You don't think it's earned? It's
I don't
Kareem
think
Jackson?
I don't think it's valid unless you accept it, and then, like Dirty Birds. I mean, that's the Atlanta Falcons. That's their hashtag. Broncos country gets you the little X mark, the spot on when you use that. The Falcons is Dirty Birds.
Mm-hmm.
So again, other people calling that, it's like, yeah, you can embrace it. But again, Cleveland Browns fans, I'll be surprised. Would the numbers have come out by now? It's Tuesday. Or when do they come out when they announce the fines from the previous week? Because I'll be very surprised if a Denver Bronco is fined in the game, in this really dirty game where they're out there trying to injure players. I'll be really surprised if a single Denver Bronco is fined in that game against the Cleveland Browns.
I think they would come out by this afternoon, but we will find out. And just to reiterate to the listeners here, Scott has been on it about Kareem Jackson and the unacceptable nature of the hits that he's made this season. There's no black or shades of gray on that one for Scott. So for him to come out and say that none of the hits in this game even come close to qualifying for that, I think goes a distance. So
no, they were complaining about PJ Locke, a shot to the ribs. Zach and I went back and forth on the hospital ball a long time ago, 2 years ago, on a jump ball, a high pass to KJ Hamler where he comes down and sprains his knee. That's not what a hospital ball is. A hospital ball is throwing it into traffic. Hospital balls are basically against the rules now. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to, if a guy is on a slant and he's going for the ball, you're not allowed to meet him when he meets the ball and take him out. That's a hospital ball. It's throwing him into traffic like that. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit when you air it out over the middle, when you throw it too high over the middle and a guy has to go up and stretch, guess what's exposed? Your ribs. Yep. PJ Locke came in with his head up, shoulder. What could Kareem Jackson have done different? Head up, shoulder. Yeah, you throw a ball like that to a wide receiver over the middle, there's a chance he's going to be hurt.
Yeah.
And this is a legal play. It's a clean play. It's an expected play. Silliness. It's nonsense.
I'm with you. I mean, if you want to come in and be, embrace being the bully on both sides of the line of scrimmage, although I will say the Broncos,
the Ravens and the Steelers twice a year, for God's sakes. Those are bloodlettings. Mm-hmm. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos were hitting hard. I don't think they were dirty at all. I mean, that Baron Browning hit was about as violent of a clean hit as I've seen in a bit. But that's what happens. And I come back to, I mentioned this on Monday's show, I believe, but it really makes me think of Tom Brady's recent interview, and also one when he was still the quarterback at Tampa, about the fundamentals being so poor in today's NFL and the rules making it where guys are getting more hurt because they believe they're protected by the rules of the game and the institution. So when he played, he wasn't throwing, slants over the middle because Ray Lewis was going to kill his wide receiver. He knew that, and because of that, he protected it and didn't throw that ball. Now guys are like, well, if they tackle that guy, it's going to be 15 yards. So I'm going to throw that one, and they might get the hit, but I'm getting the yardage.
Well, the other part of this thing with the Thompson Robinson hit, he's a runner at that point.
Yes,
he's outside of the pocket. I mean, if I go even if I went face mask to face mask on that, he's not a passer anymore. Once he's outside of the pocket, those rules don't apply anymore. Unless I'm mistaken, I've been mistaken before. But
I think
he didn't hit him in the head. 2, he's outside of the pocket and he's a runner. Well, he went high. Well, while he still has the threat to throw the ball, you have to stay high because you want to get your hands up if you see his arm cocked back. Mm-hmm. So he runs straight into him.
Yeah.
Oh, silliness. There's nothing dirty about those plays. And frankly, and like I said, I was born in Cleveland, for God's sakes. I know Cleveland Browns. I've got lots of family that are Cleveland Browns fans. I see this. And when you're the only ones complaining about it, other than people who just hate Sean Payton or hate the Denver Broncos, you're probably wrong.
Yeah.
You're probably wrong on this one. And there's nothing wrong with the way the Denver Broncos played that game. Nothing.
Yeah. Other than maybe a few turnovers here or there. No, but you're very right on that, in my opinion. And I do want to come back here to this comment about him, DTR, leaving the pocket and becoming a runner. I do think if Baron Browning launched with just his head down, feet leaving.
Oh yeah, but that doesn't matter. That was what I was saying about, well, Josh Dobbs was a runner. It doesn't matter if I'm hitting you with the bald spot on my head with my arms tucked like this.
Yes,
that's against the rules. You cannot tackle like that. He didn't. He hit him with his face mask shoulder in the chest. Mm-hmm. But even at that point, even if you had hit him face mask to face mask, I don't think you could have called a shot to the head on that because he's a runner. You helmets hit all the time. That's not the issue. Every running back that goes into a pile gets hit in the head. That's not the issue. The issue was how you make that tackle. And Baron Browning did nothing wrong. Nothing.
Yeah. Just wanted to compare it to the pitch play to Dobbs because he's definitely not the quarterback.
That was, again,
but the spearing almost.
When you're tackling like you have no arms, you're going to get flagged for leading with the crown of your helmet.
Yep, and multi-time offense with Kareem Jackson too.
Yeah, so. Well, and that's why he was suspended.
Yeah.
Going back to Justin Simmons' complaint about the one on Cortland Sutton that was flagged but not fined. That absolutely should have been fined.
Yep.
Absolutely. I don't know why it wasn't. That's a good question for the league. It should have been fined. And the multiple instances, the repeat offender status is why you get suspended.
Yep.
Which is why I was shocked Kareem didn't get suspended for the Logan Thomas hit.
That one was the dirtiest one of the year.
That was the worst of the bunch.
That was the worst one. Yeah. That one was.
And that was a repeat. That wasn't his first time. That was, I think, his third one. And not getting suspended for that.
Yeah. But that's, well, here we are now. And Dirty Denver or not, they're playing physical football and taking the ball away. Would like to see them be a little bit better, stopping the run, but we'll see. Luckily, the matchup this week is a team that would really not like to run the football. Dameon Pierce has been one of the least effective running backs in football. And why take the ball out of CJ Stroud's hand, I guess is what they're saying. But luckily, this is a team that matches up pretty well for Denver defensively. Good to see you. I did want to say hello to Greg Smith. And we also got Troy coming in here. Troy Boer, 999, says, hey, guys, love the fact that this year each game is important instead of hoping to see how the team plays for next year. Feels tenuous, but also feels like we can beat anyone. Have a great show. Well, thanks, Troy. You with the 999 Super helps make it so we can have a great show. So we really do appreciate that. And we talked about it, Scott. We were afraid to guarantee it after what we guaranteed last year. But when Sean Payton came in, we were like, you know what? This time we guarantee competent football in Denver. And it looked like we were going to be wrong again after the first 6 games. But here we are now, 6-5. The Broncos are playing meaningful football games in December, and they will be through the next 4 weeks.
And that's why I was ready to just wipe the entire roster clean. I'm like, I know Sean Payton is a good coach. I know it. There's a systematic problem. There's an institutional problem with the Denver Broncos right now. You've got a clean slate. But luckily, coaches aren't as, knee-jerk as the rest of us on there. And they stayed the course. And a calming influence in Vance Joseph, getting some guys back and healthy has made a big difference. Baron Browning has helped turn this season around. I believe that. And again, just more familiarity with the system, the offensive line being healthy and playing together and improving week to week to week to week is the sign of a good coaching staff. This is a team that is playing better and better each week. Now, they set the bar really, really low, but they're improving. What more do you ask of your team but to just keep getting better, keep getting better, keep getting better? If they're doing that, they're headed in the right direction. You should be pretty happy. And we're happy that Troy is part of our morning show too. So thank you, Troy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Troy. You're 100% right, Scott. And that's one thing, I keep coming back to eventually, statistically speaking, the turnover rate over the last 4 games is very likely to come down. With the most turnovers in a 4-game stretch since 1989. I mean, that's a long time. I would not expect that pace to continue. But that doesn't mean the rest of this team stays static. Once the turnovers regress, the Broncos are doomed. Well, not necessarily, because they keep evolving. They keep figuring out different ways to move the football, and to attack the football too. There are still glaring weaknesses on this team, of course. And probably ones that are not going to be fixable until the offseason. I mean, Scott and I harped all offseason about the depth of the defensive line, and that when the Broncos don't have a lead and they're playing more competent quarterbacks, that might be an issue. But for now, you're figuring out new ways to win. And even when the turnovers regress, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the exact same Broncos team we've seen this last few weeks. They can continue to improve.
Right. There's a lot to I don't remember who it was. They came in and made a comment on the show after the fact saying, I like that we're winning, but it just feels like we're leaving. I'm nervous because we're leaving so much out there. I'm like, well, that's a good thing. You're winning, and you can tell you're leaving so much out there. That's a good thing. When a team wins, when it's not playing its best, that's usually a sign of a good team. Talk about that with pitching. When a pitcher's getting guys out and he doesn't have his best stuff, he's a pretty good pitcher. Mm-hmm. What I think we're going to run into, and boy, wouldn't this be great? This is the good news, bad news thing, is I don't know that this team is overall good enough to sustain here, and they've done it against the Bills and a hot Vikings team and the Chiefs. But you get into the playoffs, and I'm like, I don't know if you can beat anybody at any given moment, but can you do that 3 times in a row? Can you do that 4 times in a row in the playoffs? Well, I'd like to find out. Yeah. I would like to find out, but that's where it feels tenuous to me, Troy, is that this team has improved and they can win in a multitude of ways. They just haven't had to. And going back to the Russell Wilson comment about being a game manager, he's following the game plan. When they've needed Russell Wilson to air it out and make a drive, he has. This offense has during this 5-game winning streak. We're not talking about a fluke 1 or 2 games here. During this 5-game winning streak, when the Denver Broncos have needed a drive, they've been able to come up with it. That leads me to believe if they open this thing up and they end up getting into we're down 17 at the half, we might see a 300 and something yard game from Russell Wilson as they do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, and to be fair to the Broncos offense as well, they've played some pretty damn good defenses over this winning streak as well. Outside of the Bills, who have been just terrible on defense this season since they had all the injuries. The Packers, I believe, are in the top 15 in defensive EPA per play. I know the Chiefs are in the top, I think, 5 in defensive EPA per play. You've played them twice over your last 6 games. You also have the Browns, of course, who are incredible defensively. And the Vikings, I think, were 9th coming into that game in defensive EPA per play. Probably very good again after last night's game versus the Bears. The Broncos have played some tough defenses, and they've come out victorious 5 times in a row. So the offense is doing enough right now, and that's credit to the game plan, Sean Payton and Russell Wilson playing within the game plan.
And real quick on that, I want to see, because playing them at home is a different animal, Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yeah.
They gave up 240 yards and even on a Monday night in a game like that, coming off a loss, I think they were coming off a loss. They just lost to the Bengals.
Yep.
Yeah, but 240 yards at home, the Raiders. The Dolphins put up 393 on them, 317 from the Giants, 302 from the Buccaneers, 397 at Cincinnati. The Jets put up 155 on them last week and 300 against. So they're well under 300 yards per game
at home
in total defense at home. So the Buffalo Bills at home on a Monday night coming off a loss is not just let's see where they rank over the course of 17 games. You got their best shot on defense. So I keep looking at it and saying, all right, when are you going to get that break? When can this offense open up? You're like, okay, you got done with this game. Oh, Browns, crap. Well, maybe this week against the Texans, you can drop you can put up a 30 spot or something in there. And because this one could be a shootout. This is a different team.
Yeah. Again, luckily the Texans offense, I think, matches up better against the Broncos than some of the more power-oriented teams we've seen right now. Even, I mean, that Bills game, especially, Broncos were very lucky to have a early lead like that, because I think if they are playing close or even behind, the Bills lean in that run game, and it was like Moses parting the Red Sea in that game with the run defense. Luckily, some fumbles here and there, but the run defense on first and second down is going to be worth monitoring going forward. We got Dave from Georgia, $10, saying the Browning call was horrible. Maybe the NFL should start finding refs for egregious calls. Not going to happen. Buck 'em all. I think that's one of those ones that I've made peace that in the NFL, hits that look terrible and violent are going to be flagged. And I think that I'm going to be okay living with that if it means that you have a physical defense that isn't getting called every time for hits like that. You're going to have some that are like that, as long as they don't cross that line of being outright dirty, dangerous, bad technique, bad form. But that one, I think it was a bad call. But I also understand why they did it, and I'm okay living with those going forward.
Yeah, and like I said yesterday, one of the things the personnel aspects of international soccer, international football are so cool, and they actually demote refs. If they have several tiers to their leagues. They're all independent, so it's not like, well, the minors are just an offshoot of the Dallas Cowboys. There's over 100 professional clubs that are working their way up this pyramid scheme to try and get to the top, and they will demote referees if they'll go back and review them, and they will demote them. It's very cool. I've said as socialist as Western Europe is, and it is cutthroat capitalism and accountability when we talk their sports over there versus the socialistic unionized play that we have here with our monopoly systems of professional sports, which protects the owners, everybody but the players, which protects the owners, the officials, et cetera, et cetera.
Those who have the TV contracts, especially.
Where it protects everybody but the people that we actually want to see play.
Yeah, those who create the value. But EJ, good morning, Broncos country. Let's keep winning, keep the streak alive, beat the Texans. Isaiah Stacks, good morning, Broncos country. We got Clayton Heron coming in saying, hey, smash that like button and share, guys. We appreciate that. If you're one of the many joining us today, click that thumbs up. We got Chase Wellner saying, morning, y'all. Mr. Roush coming in saying, loving the RPOs in the red zone. Yeah, and this is another thing about the game manager stuff where I will take a little bit of exception to it. It's not just the late game heroic, Scott, which that is a big part of it. Of course, unleashing Wilson to an extent in those situations. But I don't know if you fully just trust a pure game manager with the stuff they're putting on the plate of Russell Wilson in the red zone. I mean, what is it? 14 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in the red zone this year. Now a rushing touchdown added to that after this last game. He's protecting the football, and he's doing a pretty good job getting 7 instead of 3, but especially getting points instead of 0 in the red zone. So I don't know if that is pure game manager stuff there, but playing within the system, and when you need to get points when you're down there, because getting 7 instead of 3 is one of the biggest things in today's NFL. That's a big deal for Wilson. So good shout out on the red zone. I also love the zone reads that we've started to see implemented as well. Always a little bit nervous when you see your quarterback a design runner because, well, you saw it with Delarian Tomlinson Robinson, but that is a good part of the game plan with Sean Payton.
Well, and you saw with Russell Wilson too. You appreciate the effort, but once he had the first down and he's going forward, he got the ball punched out from him. And those turnovers, Nick, you talk about the not being sustainable. You could almost call it 2 turnovers this week and then a 4th down hold, which was the fumbled snap, which counts as a turnover. But even if they had recovered it, it was a turnover on downs. Those don't count as turnovers technically, but a holding on a 4th down is as good as a turnover in my book, and that is sustainable. Especially as they start getting more aggressive with the 4th and shorts, as analytics is coming into play a little bit more.
Yeah, it's A lot of fun watching that fourth down stuff too. I don't know if you caught much of the Michigan-Ohio State game, but Michigan, getting fourth down opportunities on the Ohio State side of the field, and Ohio State getting it like on their own 40, they're 35. It's like, oh man, it's easy to make a 4th and 1 when you're, on the border of field goal range versus they're 1 first down away from the other team if they get the ball back.
Punt in the end zone nets me 15 yards. I might as well go for it at 4th and 1.
Yeah, exactly. Just the opportunity.
I hate the rule. It's not like this in the NFL, but in high school, it can't be like this in college. I haven't paid attention. I get them all so confused. I can punt the ball. I can kick a field goal from 50 yards out, and as long as it makes it to the end zone, it's a touchback. That's ridiculous.
That's dumb. Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I hate that rule.
Yeah,
and I like that they changed that rule. You're too young to even remember this, Nick, but they changed this rule once kickers really started getting good. The soccer style kickers started coming in, and the kicking game became more prevalent. It used to be you'd get the ball back on the spot of the line of scrimmage. So if you kicked a 37-yard field goal, you lined up on the 27, but the ball was placed at the 20, you'd get the ball back on the 20. That's what it used to be, and they've changed it so you get it back on the 27 because kickers started getting so good. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the kicking game is really, really. Do you need to narrow the goalposts? I mean, it's almost automatic these days. It's gotten too easy for these guys.
I think we should have it like sliding, maybe, and like a arcade game, like the moving hoop there.
Widen the hash marks a little bit. It's actually harder to kick in college than it is in the NFL.
Yeah, that's very true. Also, the playing surfaces are not always as nice as they are in the NFL, unless you're playing for the Arizona Cardinals. Kathy Schmidt coming in saying, "Good morning, Scott and Nick in Broncos country. It's freezing in Germany, 23 degrees. Brr. Goodness, seems like nobody knows what they want anymore at quarterback. Bad quarterback, game manager, pro like rookie with flaws. What is it?
Let them hate."
Yeah, honestly, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to dig into the data and critique and analyze regardless of what happens, unless you're putting up like 2013 Peyton Manning numbers. And even then, I'm like, well, are they really doing enough with the deep passing game? What does that look like? But that is, at the end of the day, it is about winning. And this isn't the most incredible game from Russell Wilson. He's not playing amazing MVP level football, but he's playing winning football. And that's what counts at the end of the day. That's what people want. I know that, some people let Russ cook movement. They were winning in Seattle. He wanted a little bit more. Didn't work out so well. So now we're back to this, grinded out style. I don't know if you heard, I guess the article hasn't come out yet, but Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissaro and Mike Garofalo do a show called NFL Insiders. And they talked about how this Broncos team is essentially just devolved once again into the Seahawks teams that we've seen for years and years. Ground and pound, good defense, and maybe a little bit better offensive play calling from Sean Payton, which is a big.
Oh, darn. That team should have had 2 Super Bowls. Oh, shucks.
That's my point exactly. Yeah, I mean,
man.
It's not going to win.
People say that like it's a bad thing.
I don't think it is a bad thing at all, because that was a team that was grinding out and winning a lot. It does somewhat limit the MVP All-Pro ability of your quarterback. But again, at the end of the day,
what are you playing the game for?
Yes, you play to win the game, as Herm Edwards said in his amazing press conference.
To me, it shows the adaptability of Sean Payton.
Yes, and buy-in from Russell Wilson.
Right, all of those things.
Yes.
Again, Sean Payton came into such a good situation. I've said this before, y'all, and we've got hopefully we have a lot of new viewers. Welcome in. Appreciate you being here. But Sean Payton came into such a good situation because this team was at its lowest point last year. Russell Wilson, if you want to believe, and I believe a lot of it, the dynamics between Nathaniel Hackett and George Payton and Russell Wilson last year, it was set up for failure. There was no way it was ever going to work. You give Russell Wilson all this power and it fails mightily. Well, Russell Wilson isn't going to come in and say, okay, let's do that again. He's got a coach that he knows, that he's worked with before, that he trusts, who has a Super Bowl ring, who turned, one of his quarterback who helped with Drew Brees, had a Hall of Fame career.
Yep.
He comes in, he's got total buy-in from this team. This team was hungry. This team was thirsting for, show us how to do this. We'll do whatever you want us to do, man.
Yep.
And you see it week to week to week now. You want to say, he's nothing but a game manager. Fine. Good for him for putting his ego aside and winning football games. He should be commended for that, because what is he, 20-4 on touchdowns right now? He's getting his numbers. I'm not worried about that. And at this point in his career, he ain't worried about it either.
Yeah.
Not after last year, man. Not after last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is he in the conversation with Mahomes, Allen, even though
Hurts.
yeah, Hurts, Dak Prescott, who's
Mhm.
right now my vote for the MVP. But I don't think he really cares either. I think that did matter a little bit before, and then last year we saw what it looks like when you aren't playing a style of football that's maximizing what you do best. So as Peter comes
Congratulations
in,
to Dak. He's going to be a girl dad. He announced this
oh, yeah.
week. So very cool for him.
My vote for the MVP. Did you see? I think in this last game, the Cowboys killed. I don't even remember who they were playing, but he
They've
had
been killing everybody the last 4 weeks that they've played. Now they've been beaten up on some really bad teams, but it's not always easy to do that week to week to week to week and not have a let off.
I think he has total EPA gained in this last game was 19, which is the most EPA gained from a quarterback in a single game in multiple years. I mean, Russell Wilson's a lot of his good games, his EPA gain has been 4. So just is pretty unbelievable how Dak has been playing.
They've played the Commanders, Panthers, Giants, and then they lost to the Eagles, and then Rams, Chargers. So, they haven't exactly been facing murderer's row, but they've been taking care of business, and he's playing well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with them. I think Dak's a good guy. Peter coming in here, $4.99 said, "Let's enjoy the ride. Love the show. Just enjoying the ride. Let's enjoy the show. Go Broncos." Well, thank you so much, Peter. And yeah, I mean, Scott and I are definitely not a fan show by any means, despite what my wall says. We're going to be in here and be critical. And some people don't like that, but we're going to give you our honest takes. As Scott says, we are, what's the word? Kind of just totally went blank. We are accountable by you guys. So our takes and whatnot, hopefully, if we're being too biased or too negative, call us out on that and we can have a conversation. But we're going to be authentic.
It's not like this is just behind closed doors for Broncos fans. I've called out Cleveland Browns. I've called out the New York Jets. I've called out Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
If you disagree, I'm all ears. I won't respond when someone starts with LOL. Dude, if you're not going to listen, if you don't consider my opinion valid, why would I consider yours? So that's not a discussion.
LOL.
That's ridiculous. Is it? Why? I don't care. I don't care what you have to say now, dude. You lost me.
Show me the Carfax. No, Pearl Heater coming in. Hi, how you doing?
That's you recently.
That's me. Yeah, God. Rob Bucksbaum. Good morning, gents. Lots to go, of course. But what direction would you go with the first round pick at this point? Cornerback, wide receiver. You guys are always the best. Let's say the Broncos are picking in that 16 to 22 range. I feel like that's probably about where they're landing right now. I think cornerback and wide receiver are very much on the table for the Broncos at that point. Ideally, if there was, equal prospects across the board in terms of the position, their ability at different positions, I would hopefully go into your defensive line just because this team needs reinforcements there. Purcell, I mean, he's been okay, but Harris has been pretty poor. Was not super impressed with Lancaster or Henningsen. This team needs help on the interior defensive line. DJ Jones might be gone after this year because of his contract. You are really, really thin on the interior defensive line. I don't see it there this year, Scott, from the first round. You got Johnny Newton, but
there he is. He's on NFL mock draft database. He's 15th right now.
He's
you get him in the 20s and we'll get a good look at him in the offseason, see what his numbers are. If he's a first round guy, that could be your pick. And if you're going to go, Braylon Trice is a big edge. There's your run stuffing edge to go opposite Zach Allen on that side where, unless I'm mistaken, but I thought, and Latu is a good size guy too over there at UCLA. So those are there will be options. And then all of a sudden you look down and, hey, there's some wide receivers in this mix, right? In that range too. What do you do with Jerry Jeudy in the offseason? I'm not counting on him for next year.
No.
His production this year hasn't given me reason to think that I can count on him for next year.
Yeah.
And if I can move him and get $13 million back for my salary cap, I might strongly consider that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, this was as good as the offense looked in Denver this last week, in my opinion, especially given the opponents. And Jerry Jeudy did not really factor in the game plan. But I think everything is on the table really for the Broncos here. Brian Burns, LOL, Leonard Williams. I don't know.
Kyle says Brian Burns. Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, Brian Burns is going to be out of your price range.
The one for me that I am interested in, if there is a fire sale going on in Carolina, is Derek Brown. I'm not sure what happens with his. I know he's going to get paid here soon, but you talk about a massive plug on the interior defensive line. He would be very nice. Now, the hard thing with the Broncos with that one is that you need to start getting some young cost control players on this roster. Are you in a position?
Auburn had Rodney Garner recruiting for them, Derek Brown.
Yeah, he is a very good player. I would be on the phone with that one at least, but it is a little bit concerning to start. You need to get some young cost control players on this roster because otherwise you're going to get old and top heavy.
Derek Brown is on his option next year.
So
11-6.
What do you say? Jerry Jeudy for Derek Brown straight up?
Let's, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, we need to get young weapons for Bryce Young. Let's do that.
I mean, Lord knows with Dave Tepper, who's the instability
would resign tomorrow.
He might be out anyway.
I know. Well, what's interesting, sorry to get off topic, Ernie, but I always find it really interesting when you promote a guy from within and he fires half the coaches, like Rosberg did last year. We was like, okay, you're gonna let me be the interim coach. That's fine. Well, I'm not working with these guys anymore. They're part of the problem. Okay, go ahead. And that's what the Panthers did. They fired Reich, and then when they promoted their interim, 2 more offensive coaches went out the door.
Yep, Deuce Staley and McCown. So some known former NFL guys there. So yeah, crazy stuff in Cleveland or in Carolina. I just said Cleveland. That's just the internal there. It's always Cleveland. Mark DK coming in saying, look at the Broncos holding Wilson back until they need him and until exposing him to the point where defense can expect it. Denver Broncos for life 12-6. We'll see about the that would be 18 games. So that'd be a first round playoff out, or maybe you're 11-5. And no, that would be a first round playoff out because that would be that number of games. But that would be cool. 12-6. We're not 12-5. But yeah, I think the Broncos, I guess, good point here, Mark. And we're pivoting it back to the main topic here. Mike Sando in The Athletic, and if you haven't subscribed to The Athletic, they do amazing work out there, but he talks about Russell Wilson checking it down a lot and becoming a game manager. And this is just some of the data, Scott. It's actually pretty stark how much the Broncos with Russell Wilson have become a check down oriented passing offense. So it's home run to check down with very simple reads, but I have a graphic here. Yes, I know everybody. Nick sharing homework and math in here. Who would have seen that coming? But we have the, let me know if you can see that. Russell Wilson's air yards per completion.
Go one more zoom if you can.
One more zoom on this one. So we have Russell Wilson's air yards to completions here. And as you can see on the bottom here, it's air yards per attempt. On the x-axis, that's the bottom for folks. The y-axis on this side says air yards per completion. And Russell Wilson, way a whole bunch of them up here, a lot of air yards per attempt and completion in the top right over his career. And then an absolute drop-off this season, 2023, in the air yards per attempt. We're at 6.7 air yards per attempt and 4.7 air yards per completion, which is a complete outlier from what we've seen from Russell Wilson in his career to date. It is effective, but it is a change for the Russell. Is the Russell Wilson back conversation? Well, maybe, but it's different. Can he be back if he's playing a dramatically different style? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad style of offense, anything but, honestly, because you can be effective and explosive still, even if you aren't working the air yards. It does come down to throwing the ball in good windows and having weapons who can do things after the catch. But pulling up now the NFL league average of air yards per completion and air yards per attempt. And as you can see, the Texans way up here, they're going to be firing it away. Broncos defensive backs better be ready to be tested vertically in this game. But in the bottom of the corner here, some teams that you don't really hate being around. Now, obviously, the Panthers aren't great, but the Joe Burrow-esque Bengals, the air yards per attempt and air yards per completion, way low. And then the Kansas City Chiefs. I know some people joke about Yak-Trick Mahomes, right, with the yak in there because he's not throwing it deep. It's, getting the ball out quick to guys, being that point guard.
Or late, yes. Escaping out of that instead of running like Lamar Jackson might and picking up 12 yards. He's like, oh, I'll just give it to that guy and just flip it short. So not just getting it out late can be a lot of those short completions too.
Yeah. So just, I think some interesting data here in the conversation about Russell Wilson being back. And again, shout out to Mike Sando. I think some of this is because of the schemes that we're seeing in today's NFL. We're seeing way more zone on first down. We're seeing way more 2 deep safety shells and teams playing sub package defense, which opens up the middle of the field and gives you some room. So what does that mean for the Broncos when Russell Wilson has somewhat struggled in the quick game? You're getting to that check down to the running backs. The Broncos have the highest percentage of targets to the running backs of any team in the NFL, which is crazy considering, there's Christian McCaffrey's and Alvin Kamara's out there. The Broncos don't have that guy. But pretty interesting to see that, and Russell Wilson not being aggressive, pushing the ball vertically. It's working right now. And the main point of emphasis that Sando talks about in the article from the Broncos and the coaching is that you're having Russell Wilson be a game manager. That's all fine and dandy. They have really emphasized turnovers, not turning the ball away, not taking negative plays, and doing that can win games. And we've seen it on the other hand as well from the NFL recently. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Fields, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow when he was healthy. These guys were throwing interceptions at a very high rate over the last 4 to 6 weeks. And Russell Wilson has gone the other way, and it's working for the Broncos. So maybe it is game managing, but if you can protect the ball, good things can happen.
6, 7, 8. Russell Wilson has gone 7 of his last 8 games without an interception.
The last one I remember is the that Chiefs game, which there was a really ugly one to Nick Bolton. I wasn't sure what that one was, but
he threw two. He threw 2 in a loss, and
Arrowhead.
5 straight games without an interception. Wait a minute, that number sounds familiar for some reason. Why? Why 5 games without an interception? What am I? What? It's true. 5 wins in a row.
Yeah.
Game planning.
Yep. So it is pretty amazing. Do you have any thoughts on the check down stuff with Russell Wilson? I mean, the Broncos aren't getting the explosive plays like you'd hope. That's a league-wide trend as well. But with Russell Wilson, that's always been such a huge part of what makes him valuable that you hopefully can start to dig that out. But it's working for the Broncos right now.
I think we've seen, especially this last week, I think we saw more trust and more comfort in the offense overall than we've seen all year. Between the running game that you pointed out yesterday, Nick, the different types of run, the traps, the pulls, all of those things that we hadn't really seen. We've seen early shots. Call that pass interference. That doesn't show up. I've said that yesterday. That pass interference to Cortland Sutton for 34 yards in the first drive does not show up on stats like that. But by God, it changes the mentality of the defense that you're facing.
Yep.
It's a play that changes the game. It changes the way the game is played. I think we will see more of those if the time comes. Hey, I'm looking at 9 in the box and I got one-on-one with Cortland Sutton. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. He's proven that at worst he can fight away an incompletion, and 3 out of 4 times he's getting yards out of it. So I think we will see more of that. I feel like what I saw this last game against the Browns was Sean Payton putting more faith in the execution of his offense.
I also think, and good points all around. I think it's trust in Russell Wilson to get them into the right looks. I think Russell Wilson.
So in the offense from Russell Wilson and the checkoffs, that's part of it also.
Yep.
The audibles into good running plays right up the gut, because when he was audibling into runs, they were getting 8-9 yards right up the gut. Yep. It was just, again, the trust in his offense and the execution from top to bottom, from Russell Wilson down to Ben Powers.
Mm-hmm. And an excellent job by the coaching staff to identify something the Browns were showing. Like, when they are in this look, get to this run look because it's going to work. And we saw, pizza. We saw Bluebell was that trap play that they had that was beautiful as well. So even if it is game managing, it's a part of the quarterbacking that is not seen on the stat sheet, statistical, but getting into good run looks based on what the defense is doing is very much part of good quarterbacking, and something that was hidden yardage with, the guys of like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, knowing when the defense looks like this, if we audible into this run look or flip the personnel here, it's going to be a good play for us. So really excited to see that. Just more cohesion between the head coach, the offensive staff, and the quarterback, and knowing what you need to do to be effective and efficient. That is the word that you are hunting for the Broncos, efficient. Brian Dunn, 1999. Thank you so much, Brian. Good to see you. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Appreciate you coming in. Also see our guy Jamal Killings is in the house. Morning Broncos country. Do you think Broncos should still draft a quarterback? It's very much on the table. And Scott, I want to kind of get to a rookie quarterback. We have some anonymous quotes here from coaches that I think are worth at least discussing. So we have 2 different anonymous defensive coaches in the NFL here. First quote is, they don't want the quarterback and the offense to mess it up after they were turning it over early in the year. Wilson is throwing checkdowns as quick as I've ever seen him. And that goes back to the data here. The one that is a little bit more, I don't want to say inflammatory, but definitely headline grabbing, is a quote from another opposing defensive coach that they've seen. Sean is calling the game almost as if Russell Wilson is a rookie quarterback. Basically, it's a run, and if he's not throwing it either 1 or 2 in his progression, he's scrambling, which plays to his strengths. I hate to use this term, but he's a game manager. He is a very good one too. So it could be inflammatory, but the way I see it, and that one is kind of like what we're talking about here. He is managing the game. It's effective. They're not putting a lot on his plate from the progressions and reads. They are pre-snap, but not post-snap. And it's been efficient and effective to date for the Broncos.
Okay, here we go. He's calling the game like he's got a rookie quarterback. He's simplifying the offense. Fine. We agree. We've talked about all that. We've talked about how last week I felt like it started opening up. Russell Wilson is executing it like a veteran. Okay? So he's calling simple game plans. What rookies typically have a 20-4 touchdown interception ratio?
CJ
Stroud's doing it. CJ Stroud is unbelievable. CJ Stroud is in the MVP. That doesn't happen.
No.
That does not happen. CJ Stroud is having an unbelievable, historic year. Good for him.
We haven't seen this since probably Andrew Luck. This level of quarterback coming in and be like, holy cow, he's it.
Yeah, that's the exception.
Yep.
Typically, if you're lucky, I'm going to look up Andrew Luck's rookie real quick. But typically, if you're lucky, you might get a 1.5 to 1 touchdown interception ratio, and it's usually closer to 1 to 1.
Yeah.
We're talking 5 to 1 now for Russell Wilson. So you can say it fine. And yeah, here's what I say. 1.5 to 1. Andrew Luck threw 18 interceptions his first year, 23 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. What CJ Stroud is doing is off the charts. It's in its own league. That's the exception that helps prove the rule.
Yeah.
Good for him. And he's going to be a handful because he continues to do it. He's been really good. Fun to watch.
That chart too. How about the air yards? I mean, it's not like he's dinking and dunking. He is pushing the ball. He is putting the ball in theory in harm's way. It's not this, easy ones. He is asking 3-point shooter or hit every single 2-pointer is that long mid-range one. Like, why are you hitting that? I guess it's working for you, but that's not efficient from what everybody else is doing, but damn, it's working. So it'll be a lot of fun to see this. And we got Keith coming in talking about trust. How much does Russ trust P. Ryan over last year's Melvin Gordon? Big reason for running back production. I mean, I don't know if anybody out there has been as big of an advocate for Samaje P. Ryan and his value as me, even though I am definitely the running backs don't matter folks. But I am also, if your running back can't be a +1 in pass protection, I don't know if I want them on the field. And P. Ryan has been awesome in pass protection. And I love the evolution that we've kind of seen here because you have a playmaker, a point guard kind of at quarterback too, that while P. Ryan can be part of the protection, if Russell Wilson leaks, P. Ryan and him have a little bit of connection there where P. Ryan can, release his block too, and then Russell Wilson can get it to him and do something after the catch. I mean, the last Bills drive, the last Vikings drive, that's essentially what the offense was to move it down the field. So it works. It's kind of fun. I would maybe at some point like a little bit more dynamism with the size at the running back position for the Broncos, but one thing at a time for the Broncos, trying to build this team in Sean Payton's image, but it's working so far. And honestly, I think I'm in the boat. This may be a conversation for another time, Scott, but we need to start getting P. Ryan more touches because he was effective with them. I know there are a lot of trap stuff. It's kind of a specific call, but also I think that you maybe need to start protecting the carry load for Javonte Williams as well.
I wouldn't mind seeing them switch roles every so often, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks, because Javonte Williams is a hammer, and he went 18 for 70 or something, 3.5 yards a carry of hard yards when they are expecting the run, and he is running into contact every time, and he was a little sore, I'm sure, on Monday.
Yeah.
Let P. Ryan. P. Ryan's a big back.
Yeah.
Let him do that this week against Houston, and then third quarter, fourth quarter, then let them try and tackle Javonte Williams. Let Javonte Williams go out there against a defense that has been dealing with P. Ryan. But I think this is a better matchup for a quicker back, the Houston Texans. You've been facing some guys that want to load the box. Minnesota Vikings want to load the box. There's no space there when you're playing them. There was some space with the Cleveland Browns, but going in, you didn't know that for sure. And they may have just squeezed everybody in if they saw Jaleel McLaughlin in there, as opposed to P. Ryan or Williams, who have a little bit more passing game efficiency, as you might say. But I think you'll see more space. You need McLaughlin when you're going to have space. You weren't going to have space against the Vikings, and you didn't expect to have space against the Browns.
it's just, we talked about it on here with how much teams are doing pressure-wise early on. If they know that your running back is a detriment in the pass protection numbers, they are going to do everything they can to isolate a rusher against that running back. And when you have Pirine or Williams back there, that's not an issue. But when you have McLaughlin, as we saw with Pirine's interview, where he said that guy needs to learn how to do a chop block, then it's or chip, I can't remember which one, but that's something that you've got to watch here for Pirine. And Colin Wood makes a good call.
Cut block.
Cut block, that was it. Yeah, chop's illegal. Colin makes a good point. Herbert did have great rookie numbers. I think also Dak Prescott was unbelievable as a rookie too, but there have been some good ones, but those are exceptions. And one of the reasons that I'm of the belief that a quarterback, typically, if they're going to be the dude, shows it pretty quickly. There are exceptions to that too, but ones who end up being the dude, you see pretty early.
Herbert was all pro as a rookie with a 3-to-1
he was
touchdown interception ratio. He threw 31 touchdowns against 10 interceptions.
Yeah. He was good that year.
And I think CJ Stroud is ahead of that pace right now. He's at 19-5. So he's almost, what are we, 2/3 through 11 games? He gets 6 more. So yeah, we'll call it 2/3. So he'd be about 30-8. And he still has about another 1,500 yards in the tank for almost 5,000 yards. Jeremy asks, I haven't watched any Texans games. What about CJ Stroud's game is so impressive? Oh, the pizza.
Sorry, I just enjoyed that.
That's okay. I don't even know where that one is. I'll unclick it here.
I got it.
Jeremy says, I'm watching Texans game. What about CJ Stroud's game is so impressive? Arm running. I watched him against the Falcons. One of the games I watched him in. And they actually the Falcons get 0 pressure on the quarterback. And they kind of ran a cloud and pretty well locked down his receivers, and he was throwing it into coverage a lot. He's not beating you with his runs. What he's beating you with is good reads, accurate, strong arm. As simple as that. He's finding the open guy and he's getting them the ball. That's as simple as I can put it.
I don't want to be this guy, but there's much more playmaking than we saw at Ohio State. Now, granted, it's driven because it's necessary in the NFL compared to Ohio State. We saw it against Georgia last year. We saw it against Georgia, but that was a 1-game thing. So it was like, is this actually him, or was he playing out of his mind?
They're equal talented or out talented.
Out talented. Out talented. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's always the sample size thing, but he's showing to be that guy again that we saw versus Georgia, where the playmaking is there. He has a really lightning quick arm that he can be accurate with different arm slots too, throwing it around windows. And I think his mental processing of the game is awesome. If you guys hadn't had a chance to check it out yet, the Jags versus Texans game this last week was really good. Not as good as the Bills-Eagles game, but a damn good game from this last week. There weren't many good games in that first time slot on Sunday. But there was a play where there's a free rusher on his backside, and he didn't see him, but he knew that the guy was coming. And he had his back to him, and he flipped and he turned around and made that rusher miss him. And he never even clocked him visually. But because of his understanding of where pressure should be coming from and tying that with his pass protection, he was able to flip around it, buy time, and then hit an open receiver. He's also just been incredibly accurate deep. He's hunting big plays and he's getting them. I can't remember what game it was, but he had the 10 for 13 on passes over 10-year air yards or something. I mean, just hunting. It's not checkdowns. It's physical, or it's aggressive down the field. So it's been fun. It's almost like good Aaron Rodgers somewhat right now, where it's like he's like good athlete, but it's the ability.
That's a really good comp.
That's what I'm seeing right now from him. It's like it's good Aaron Rodgers, where it's down the field. How much he's pushing the ball down the field and not putting it in harm's way doesn't make sense for how much he is being aggressive with it, but he's playing good. You can have him. I think he did have a 3-interception game versus Arizona. So we'll see what happens, especially because the Texans struggle running the football. So it's 3rd and long a lot. And if the Broncos can do that, they can be a lot of fun in their pressure packages. But he's been awesome. And yeah, Tank Dell's been great too. Nico Collins has been fantastic for them. Dalton Schultz in the red zone. I mean, this is a team that's cooking. I would not be shocked if Bobby Slowick is a head coach somewhere next year, first-time offensive coordinator for the Texans.
I'm going to blow your mind, and then we're going to get to Coach Chris and Ethan, who is blowing our minds with their super chats here on not giving up too early on young players. Put in that boat. Did you know, because I didn't, because I went and saw this guy at the Senior Bowl, it seems like a decade ago, Nico Collins and Tank Dell are the same age.
I believe it.
Doesn't it seem like Nico's been around forever, though?
Yeah. Yeah, that
But
does.
coming from a smaller school versus a guy who could do a 3 and out, you come out at 20 years old. You've been
Yeah.
in the league for 4 years already, and then the rookies who play at a smaller school and have to put in their time, maybe get a transfer. They're there for 5 years, maybe 6. But Tank's 24 years old, and so is Nico Collins. So young receivers doing really well. Tank is a very, very good complementary player who is turning into just a weapon for Houston. He's not turning into one. He is a weapon. Like Nick said, and I want to echo this, is I think the Denver Broncos defense matches up better against the Texans than they do against some of these other teams they've already beaten, because they don't run the ball very well. And the strength of your team right now is on the back end, is in coverage. So if I can put you in second and long, third and long, which has not been a strength of the Denver Broncos, I can blanket those receivers. It should be a kind of a similar game plan to what the Atlanta Falcons did. And they limited CJ Stroud pretty well in that game. Coach Chris comes in and says, good morning. Our playoffs start this weekend. Our D-line needs to contain Stroud. I see Benito in the spy, much like he did against Kansas City. I see us running the ball a lot to keep Houston off the field.
You got to be efficient and effective rushing the football, and you got to watch out. I know the Broncos just came off a game where Myles Garrett, best pass rusher in football, in my opinion, coming in this game. They neutralized him, but you have a not equal challenge this week, but one that is very, very tough, in the third overall pick in this last draft, and Will Anderson, who's playing really good football for this Texans team. But other than him, I don't think they have a lot of true difference makers out there. I think Derek Stingley can be, but he's still working his way back from injury. He got a lot versus Calvin Ridley in this last week's game. So it will be interesting to see that. Houston is also, the Jags repeatedly picked on their nickel cornerback. So I think the Broncos are going to be trying to get to 11 personnel in this game and trying to isolate wide receivers versus that slot, because the slot can't play. Let's just be honest. He was not very good in this game. But as far as running the football, hopefully the Broncos can be effective in that. This is still a Houston team. They're going to play tough. D'Amico Ryans has got them playing great ball, but they're still a little bit away. So they can be got in the run game.
I don't know that you need to spy, but against like Kansas City, like you're talking about, makes sense to contain him behind the line of scrimmage, because he's not running to rush. He's running to set up the throw. So if you can spy him and make sure he doesn't get another 3 seconds when he rolls out and beats contain, because he rushed for more yards last week against the Jaguars than he has against anybody else, and that was almost a third of his entire production. He's only rushed for about 140 yards. He had 50 last week. So he's not a running threat. He's a scrambling threat, if that makes sense. And you're right. He's going to extend plays. And Benito's been used well by Vance Joseph to take advantage of his strength, which is athleticism.
You got to get to third and long with him, man. He's what the Broncos have personnel-wise on third and long and pass rush situations is so much fun, but my God, they are so bad at getting to third and long. I think the worst defense in the NFL in success rate since week 5. So that's after the horrible run too. The offseason really needs to be focused. The defense this offseason needs to be focused on how do we do better on first and second downs to get to third and long, because you got some fun pieces there for third and long, but getting there has been a bit of a journey. Ethan, DWI guys coming in saying, isn't it funny when the bully gets bullied, it has to be because they are playing dirty rather than they just got their lunch handed to them on both sides of the ball? Smack my head. Great show, gents in Broncos country. Yeah, it's really fun when the Broncos can bully the bully. And I said it yesterday, Scott, that was the most fun I've had watching a Broncos game in a long time, because I know a lot of people love, the Star Wars numbers and whatnot, but I think you and I share a brain here. We were kind of old heads when it comes to football. When you can just, we're going to run this play, what's coming and you can't stop it. Yes, just absolutely beat them down. I mean, hit the ice bath, son. Like Cleveland, good luck. I'm sure they're going to be rough next week after that. I mean, I feel like teams, even after they've played Broncos, it's kind of like when you play a really good smash mouth team in college, you are bad the next week too, because you just were so physically beaten up. And that's kind of what the Broncos are becoming right now on both sides of the ball. I want to see a little bit more from the defensive line, but they're hitting from the back 7 forward. So that's something that is fun to watch. And thank you, Coach Chris and Ethan. Big super chats, keeping the lights on in here for us. We really do appreciate that. Like I've said, this show would not happen without the super chats. Obviously, the community, not everybody has to be like Ethan coming into the 50, but when you are really helping us with these shows. So big shout out to you, Ethan. We appreciate you.
Yeah, and I like the bully getting bullied. It's strange to me the crying that came out of that game. I mean, the excuse, "Oh, we're half a team, we're beat up." So what?
Yep.
Just take the L and move on.
Yep.
Okay, I don't need to cry about it, but I give the general public on social media way too much credit to be rational, and they're not. Fan stands for short for fanatical.
Yeah.
The power of bias is unbelievable. How people will rationalize things in their mind when it comes to these teams.
Yep.
Politics is worse, but to sports is bad.
I'd rather have it be funneled towards politics. That's let the irrational stuff go on there.
Oh, goodness.
But final thought here, as we wrap it up, and thanks again, Ethan. Really, really do appreciate that. This Mike Sando article, I think it's really good if you guys have a chance to check it out on The Athletic. He talks about the Broncos' defensive reversal, how they've been pretty miraculous, and they can't really point to one thing specifically. It's not just the ousting of guys, but it's players executing at a higher rate as well, and Vance Joseph understanding what he has a little bit more, and also calling a little bit more of what he wants to, moving from the cover 6, cover 4 heavy to more cover 2 looks. The run fits have been better because of that. Guys just playing better assignment football. But really, it's the Russell Wilson stuff that is interesting to me. And you liked my Aaron Rodgers, CJ Stroud comparison earlier, Scott. This is one, too, where I'm coming around to Russell Wilson. This isn't an MVP quarterback right now. It's not an all-pro quarterback. But what this looks like right now to me, a highly efficient offense. They're utilizing the legs as need be, and they're playing turnovers or death level football on offense. This right now really mimics to me the early Andy Reid Kansas City Chiefs with Alex Smith. You have a veteran quarterback who is smart. He's getting to the right line checks. He can use his legs as need be. And my God, they are not going to turn the damn ball over. I mean, it really does line up that way to me with the style of offense right now. Is it a game manager quarterback here? Yes. Is it something that's not super complicated from a post-snap read perspective? No. But when you have a good enough offensive game plan or you get into good reads pre-check, you can do that. So I see this as very much what we saw early from Alex Smith and Andy Reid in Kansas City, the pre-Mahomes Chiefs, which were still winning the AFC West there for a bit. And that can be, I think, good enough with Russell Wilson right now. What does it mean down the line when the contract explodes? Is that good enough for when he's going to get paid that much of the salary cap? That's a conversation for another day. But for now, it's working and it's highly efficient. And as long as they're protecting the ball, avoiding the negative plays, which is not just turnovers, Scott, it's also sacks, avoiding the negative plays, you can win some football games this way.
That's a great call. Just looking at Alex Smith's numbers, he started with Kansas City in 2013. The record that he had as a Kansas City Chiefs starting quarterback: 11-4, 8-7, 11-5, 11-4, and 9-6. He did not once throw double-digit interceptions with the Chiefs, and he only the most he ever threw was 8. He averaged about 5.5 per season, keeping the ball out of harm's way and relying on other parts of your defense. I think the big play ability off script is still the wild card that Russell Wilson has over a guy like Alex Smith.
And I agree with you 100%. I was already getting a little long-winded there, but the ability to make those S-tier plays that we've seen outside of structure, one of the touchdowns this week, I think it was a touchdown, the play that Cortland Sutton dropped in the right corner of the end zone, which would have been a hell of a catch, but he got both feet down. I don't know how he didn't catch that, but those are ones that he can play beyond the X's and O's. And if you can do that while being mercilessly machine efficient between the 20s and protecting the football, that can win football games. I don't know if the defense has the horses still to play that, to win, go deep with a playoff run. But for now, it's working. And again, I just come back to, this is Andy Reid, Alex Smith style going on right now. And that's not a bad thing when you're winning football games and you can complement the other areas.
No, like I said, it's a credit to Sean Payton and his ability to adapt to what his team and frankly, the image that he wanted to build his team in the offseason. Every move that he made was to get better running the ball and to get better against the run.
Yep.
And one of those has worked. The other, though, is taking advantage of the people that you have on the back seven of your defense, the backside of your defense, to attack the ball. Now, there's going to have to be an investment in the front seven. That's 14 players. I know, but you know what I mean. As far as when I'm in 1st and 10, I've got to get better up front. I have to.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we got Michael coming in again saying, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Thank you so much, Michael. Go Michael. Coming into the double super chat today. We always really appreciate you. Scott, any final thoughts before we get on out of here? Talked a lot about the Broncos, started to turn the page towards Houston. Talked about the big hits versus dirty Denver versus the Browns, and the Russell Wilson stuff and where he's at right now. It's really just what an interesting time to cover the Broncos, because this is a fascinating team. And also one thing that Sando talked about in the article, Broncos keep this up, Sean Payton, coach of the year. That's something that, I mean, you have to be in the conversation right now. We'll see how they finish, but
yeah,
keep it together 1-5, to trust your guys, to empower Vance Joseph, to get this out of Wilson after he was dead and washed last season. Got to be in the coach of the year conversation.
Yeah, I think there's 4 guys, and several of them still play each other. In fact, all of them, for the most part, still play each other. For me, Sean Payton, Dan Campbell, Lions, who you will face.
Yep.
And then the 2 that will face each other again, and Shane Steichen with the Colts and D'Amico Ryans with the Texans. You can do something about D'Amico Ryans this weekend.
Yeah, that would be a big one. I mean, Scott, I can't believe you didn't say it. I probably would have to give a slight shout out to the Steelers for this as well, because they are so terrible on offense and they're just still winning football games. That doesn't make it.
It's too expected at this point, though. It's like, oh yeah, the Steelers won 10 games again. I mean, to me, he's like coach of the decade. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer in my book, Tomlin.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's unbelievable. They're really they're starting to tick me off though. I need to start losing some football games, but I digress. Good conversation today, Scott. A lot of fun. We will be back again tomorrow morning covering the Falcons over on Scott's channel. Make sure you guys are checking that out. And we always get to just general NFL draft stuff as well. So, and we'll be talking.
The Jets. It'll be a good time for us to hack on Hackett. So if you wanna enjoy that for a little Schadenfreude, that's happiness at the misfortune of others.
Love it.
You can join us tomorrow.
The Germans have good words, Scott. My favorite word is Walden Samkeit, which is the feeling of being alone and isolated in the wilderness. What a great word. It's just, Germans have a word for everything. But appreciate you guys. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at Mile High Huddle, as well as at BFB_football pod, or BFB_pod. Also, make sure you're following us on Instagram at Mile_High_Huddle, Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe to our channel over on YouTube, Mile High Huddle. Like this show and share it on your social media platforms. If you guys haven't done so yet, make sure you click the thumbs up on the way out. Sorry, we can't get to every single comment in here. If you do leave a super chat, we damn sure make sure we get to you on that. But appreciate anybody. If there's something that we said on the show that you're curious about, hit us up on Twitter. I'm too active on Twitter. Today's a busy day. I might not get to you today, but appreciate everyone. Scott, we'll see you again tomorrow. Everybody continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.